Zara sat by the warm fireplace with her grandfather, sipping jasmine tea. Her grandfather told her about the visit he had received from her grandmother after she gave Zara the Emerald Flower Vision quest. Grandmother told him that Zara must take that quest further and enter the frozen forest, where the Sweat Lodge is located near Alcoan Ibanuj, the frozen lake. There, she must face her deepest fears. The next morning, her aides prepared for her daunting journey to the frozen forest. Before she left, she visited her parents in the palace throne room. Her father and mother were worried for their daughter. Zara assured them that she would be careful and that this was something that she felt she must do in order to become the leader that her warrior guards needed. Sisters entered and surrounded her with love, concern and begged her to take them with her. She reminded them that this quest required her to travel alone. After she left the throne room, outside in the garden, Prince Iowa was waiting for her. He held her close and said he was feeling pride in her decision to take this quest, but warned that she be very cautious and careful, because they still have not been able to find Cain. She embraced him and told him that she loved him and would return to his arms after the quest. Her aides were standing at the gate and helped her put on her pack and brought her bow and arrows and a warm cloak. She turned to see her family standing at the gate, waved to them and started out on her journey. After what seemed like an eternity, Zara reached the Sweat Lodge at the mouth of the lake. She placed her pack on a hook on the wall and went out to gather wood to start a fire at the inside and outside pits. While out in the dense forest, Zara was lost in thought about what her grandfather told her about the prophecy. She was a well-trained warrior and convinced herself that she feared nothing and no one. Her only mission in life, as far back as she could remember, was to learn everything she could to safeguard her family and her people. The sound of a twig snapping brought Zara back to the present, where her training instantly kicked in. She dropped the wood and instinctively pulled her bow and arrow. She searched all around her for the originator of that sound but saw nothing and no one. Back in the half-dome Sweat Lodge, Zara started the fire and took lit sage to summon the spirits of her ancestors, to purge the lodge of any dark energy that may have taken up residence in the lodge and surrounding area. All of a sudden, the fire went out and the smoke became very dark and filled the lodge. The smoke seemed to dance menacingly around the room, swirling around the middle of the room and slowly drifted up through the air vent in the ceiling. As the smoke cleared the room, the fire jumped back to life and Zara could see shadows around the fire pit outside of the lodge. As she exited the lodge to investigate, she saw the woods come alive with the images of her ancestors beckoning her to come and join them in the circle of light amongst the banyan trees. Some she recognized and some she remembered from stories that her grandparents shared at bedtime to a sleepy little girl. Each ancestral spirit shared wisdom with her and knowledge from the past, then morphed into an animal spirit. Her great-great-grandfather turned into a wolf, her uncle, a lion and her godmother, Serafi, into a brown bear. As the circle of light faded, the ancestor spirits walked back with her to the lodge. There they sat around the outside fire pit and continued to tell her stories of the past. After each ancestor finished their story, their spirit started to fade back into the forest. Serafi was just about to tell her story, when Zara heard a crack out on the frozen lake. She sprang to her feet to go and investigate. Dusk was settling over the lake and a mist was rising from the frozen water. Zara quietly approached the edge of the lake and thought she could see the figure of a wolf and a bear standing on the ice in the middle of the lake. These figures seemed to beckon her. Thinking this was another ancestor, Zara stepped cautiously onto the frozen lake. As she drew closer to the spirits, their figures started pouncing on the ice. As they did so, they started to coalesce into one tall dark figure. To her alarm, she recognized this figure as Kale, the evil medicine man that her troops had been searching for, since her and her sister rescued her father from his pyramid dungeon. Knowing she was in danger, Zara turned back toward the shore to grab a weapon to defend herself. As she did so, Kale grabbed her from behind. At that moment, the cracked and she felt herself being pushed down into the icy waters. She struggled to swim upwards, however icy waters seemed to freeze above her in every direction. Zara felt herself losing consciousness in the frigid darkness of the murky waters. She swam upwards to find the surface, however every time she thought she saw an opening, the waters would freeze solid just over her head. Using the little bit of strength she had left, she pulled her knife from her waistband and started stabbing at the ice. Every time she broke through the ice, it seemed to freeze back over. Zara was starting to feel the effects of the frigid waters. Just as she was about to succumb to hypothermia and drift to a deadly sleep, she heard a loud crack and felt a strong tug on the back of her tunic. At that moment, she drifted into unconsciousness. As she was coming to and the haze in her head was clearing, she awoke to find herself lying on warm furs next blazing fire. She could hazily make out animal figures all around her. Feeling safe, Zara drifted back out into deep slumber. When she again regained consciousness, she was inside the sweat lodge. There, she could make out the image of a large white bear and one of her deceased ancestors from across the flames. She recognized the large white bear as her grandmother's spirit, come to watch over her and bring her strength. Her ancestor told her what had happened to her and warned her the dangers that still lingered in the forest. He told her it was time to depart back to her and warned them what Kale had tried to do and that he was amassing a horde of minions to attack her people. Zara was given a hot cup of an elixir made from the oud agbera. This flower of strength was always made by her grandmother for the young female warrior's initiation after rigorous training. Zara could already feel her strength of will returning. She dressed in dry clothing and a warm cloak and put out the fires. Her grandmother's spirit bear motioned for Zara to get onto her back. Zara held on tight as they raced through the snowy forest. Just as they cleared the forest, they were met by a garrison of Zara's warriors and her family. Zara rushed into her father's arms and was surrounded by her sisters. She told them about her frozen journey and the impending dangers that Kale represented. Her father assured her that this time, they would be prepared for Kale. As they turned to escort Zara from the edge of the forest back to the palace, she turned to see her grandmother's spirit bear recede back into the depths of the banyan trees.